I wonder if you guys missed my crazy therapy sessions as much as I do. I haven't done one in a long time. It's because Sean and I have had a lot to talk about. But today, I'm doing the first one since my crazy Drive to Survive rant. And although Sean found that funny, I think he said something along the lines of maybe we should just focus to having civilized conversations amongst the two of us. And he was right. But sometimes I just hear things that drive me wild and I think it's time. It's time for a therapy session. Anyways, Formula One therapy number 9. I'm Nick of Nick and Sean of the Philosophers. Welcome, pit crew, to another episode of Formula One therapy, which, like I'd like to remind everybody, is for me, not for you. First and foremost, the obligatories, F1_philosophy at Instagram. Like and follow all of our stories, our posts, please. We really appreciate every like, every follow. F1 Philosophy at YouTube, all one word. Thank you guys so much. I just saw today we got 1,000 views. No, it's not a lot, but every view, every like, every comment, it's very important to us. We love your feedback. We love to know that you guys like and care about what we have to say. Makes us want to do more. Makes us want to keep going. Sean and I, like I've said early on, we like talking Formula One either way, so we might as well just record it and see where it takes us. And we really appreciate you guys. Thanks for getting us to 1,000 views. Here's to 2,000 views. Here's to 10,000 views. Here's to 100,000 views. I thank you guys if you get us to that point. We can't thank you enough. And of course, f1philosophypod@gmail.com to join the fantasy league. Producer Gatsby is in 5th. He's starting to get angry and antsy. He wants to win the league. The other day, I was telling him what a horrible day I was having. It was almost as bad as 9/11, and I was just joking. Because I make dark jokes like that. And I know it's bad, but it's my type of humor, and I'm sorry, everybody. However, Producer Gatsby, being the crazy person that he is, looked at me and said, "Yeah, we really got them good that day." What the hell does that mean, Gatsby? What the hell does that mean? This is why you need to join the fantasy league, everybody, because God only knows what Producer Gatsby is capable of or what he's part of. So we need to keep him at bay at all times, because if he starts winning, he's going to start to get arrogant. He's going to start to get crazy. We really got him good that day. Producer Gatsby, what did you do? What did you do, Producer Gatsby? He's not here today. I'm solo, riding solo. Producer Gatsby wouldn't come anyway because he's fucking lazy. Anyways, today I'm here to talk about something that actually has to do with laziness and work ethic. My therapy and my thought process and my thinking of Formula One, which I reflect on every morning. I have a nice little coffee. I look at the news. Formula One news. I've stopped listening to mainstream news or any other political news because it's just awful. It doesn't do your brain any good service anymore. It doesn't help anybody to be involved in politics. It's a corrupt, sleazy money laundering game as far as I'm concerned. So I don't listen to the news anymore. I listen to Formula One news and I reflect on what I read and what I see. And then I talk to myself in my head and say, I wonder how this relates to what I think, or if is my thinking wrong, or is this tracks with what I believe is the projection of Formula One. And the other day I came across something. It was a video. And here, I'm just going to pull it up right now. But it was a video about dominance in Formula One. It's called The F1 Dominance Problem by the Daily Fuel Up. So I'm going to play a few seconds of a clip. And I don't want any copyright issues, Daily Fuel Up. I'm a big fan of your stuff. I watch a lot of your videos. I'll see you in court, though. You're British. We're North American. We're a litigious society. Doesn't matter if we're right or wrong. We'll just take you to court. So be wary if you have a problem with copyright here, because F1 Philosophy is going to stop at no cost to win this title or to win that court case. Sorry, everybody. I'm just a little sick. Can't shake this sickness. If you heard the F1 Philosophy number 15 Monaco recap, you'll know that I've been sick since Monday. It's now Thursday, May 30th, 2024. Time to time, you're going to hear me pull aside to cough, and hopefully I can edit those out. And if not, I don't really give a shit because, like I said, Formula One therapy is for me, not you. Anyways, F1 Daily Fuel Up, the F1 dominance problem. It was talking about how there's been dominant periods in Formula One by certain teams. And he was saying essentially how it got worse. It's been getting worse over the years. And I agree. Sean and I have talked about it. And we've gone from the 2000s of Ferrari, which supposedly was the worst, to some Red Bull domination in the early 2010s, to 8 years of Mercedes, which to me was the most insufferable time, to now Red Bull dominating. And not as much anymore, as we've talked about in the 2024 season. Looks like we have a genuine fight for the constructors, genuine fight for the title potential. I don't really think for the title, driver's title, but we'll see. Who knows? Sean and I have talked about that. Max seems a little uncomfortable right now, but if anyone's going to turn it around, it's him. But ultimately, he actually had the same take that I did. And he said it's probably time to let have another tire manufacturer in to give more teams the chance to experiment with setup on another tire manufacturer, have maybe longer stints or shorter stints or faster stints. Design a car that is suited for a different type of tire instead of just this blanket Pirelli, which always seems to fuck up and nobody really likes them. And they always come out with the wrong type of compounds. Sean talked very astutely in our Monaco recap about how there was 2 tires that were able to go the entire race, the medium and the hard. And although some of that had to do with nonsense, like 3 seconds a lap slower pace to save your tires, it's still bad that there was 2 different tire sets that could have gone to the end. There's no real competition. There's no strategy. It's just park your car in the middle of the fucking road of Monaco and keep everybody at bay by slowing down, which is not racing. It's awful. A lot of people were comparing it to Alan Prost. Yeah, Alan Prost had to deal with people who could potentially pass him. Prost was genuine thought process and strategy. That was just park your car. That was just anti-racing. But anyways, he comes up with that solution, a solution similar to mine, which is let teams engineer the cars they want, loosen some of the regulations, some of the restrictions. He doesn't talk about eliminating the cost cap, which I think is one of the main ones that I'm going to talk about, is a problem. I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But the main issue I had with the video was just this small little clip in time where he sort of nonchalantly mentions what they did to Ferrari, or why they had to stop Ferrari in the early 2000s. He mentions it as if it was the right idea, as if there was no problem in the thinking. And I want you to listen to the clip to maybe understand what I'm thinking here. I'm not saying I'm always right. I heard it and I thought, that's such a negative way of looking at the world. That's such a negative way of competition. Anyways, let me play it for you, and then we'll discuss it more together after.
Years, it all took shape. But they had a couple of important things that helped them succeed in their mission. The lack of a budget cap in those days, paired with the seemingly unlimited funding from Maranello, helped. The lack of rules around private testing, paired with Ferrari having their own private test track, helped too. This meant that Schumacher would spend 3 or 4 days a week at Fiorano, pounding in around 100 laps a day in his F1 car, getting all the info they could possibly need, and more. Teams can't do this now. It actually makes Mercedes and Red Bull's success even more impressive, as they're mainly relying on simulations to do the work for them.
So, did you hear that? Did you hear what I heard? He was talking about Michael Schumacher testing 4 days a week at Fiorano, at the private racetrack for Ferrari. He was talking about it as if it was such an unfair advantage that Michael was willing to put in that type of work week in, week out during the season. That Michael was willing to test the car and give good information. That Michael was willing to devote his life to what he loved, his passion, and to win because of it. That's at least how I took it. Maybe I'm just seeing things and I'd love to hear your comments. Maybe I'm just hearing something that's not really there, but that's how I took it. And it sums up the mentality of that time so well. And he goes on to explain in the rest of the video. I didn't want to play the full thing because of copyright. He goes on to explain that, yeah, we had to do that to make things more fair. Teams, like he said, teams can't do that now. It makes Mercedes and Red Bull's domination all that more exceptional. It's like, well, I'm going to talk about later why that isn't the case, but let's just start on this. What's wrong with Michael Schumacher's mentality? What's wrong with that? Why is Michael Schumacher's attitude such a big problem here? He even says in the video earlier, like I said, didn't want to play too much of it, but he says in the video earlier, it had a lot to do, Ferrari's dominance had a lot to do with Michael Schumacher. His feedback, yeah. No other driver could do what he did. That's why I think he's the best of all time, is he knew the ins and outs of the car so well, he could figure out in a tenth or 2/10th or half a second, find a second in a season, all from his information on certain parts of the car. He could find an advantage unlike anybody else. Verstappen, to me, is the closest we've seen since him. I think because of these regulations that were put in place for Michael, we never seen the full potential of Max, if he even has it. Some would wonder if he even has that, if it's all been Newey. I don't know. I guess we'll never really know. I think Max has a lot to do with it. Because ever since Max's introduction in race 6 in 2016 at Red Bull, there's been an upward trajectory at the team. Sean will point out that also Newey came back around that time too. But yeah, I guess we'll never really know. But the point is, what's so bad about practicing every day? Why didn't other teams do the same thing? He talks about, the endless budget from Maranello. Ferrari, yeah, was the richest team at the time, but it's not like McLaren and Williams were poor. Even Toyota at the time, like it's not doing justice to the context of the time. There were a lot of rich teams in Formula One at that time. Yes, Jordan wasn't one of them. Yes, Minardi wasn't one of them. Yes, Tyrrell, or I guess Tyrrell was gone at that point, or Arrows, stuff like that. They were all already gone. And Sauber, I think it was Red Bull Sauber at that point in time. Red Bull had a lot of money. They just didn't have the infrastructure to compete. They didn't have the Arrow that was so dominant at that point in time. But Williams was sponsored and had a partnership with BMW at that point in time. And BMW at the time put close to $2 billion. You have to look, that doesn't seem like a lot now, but 25 years ago, that was a lot. Williams BMW was a well-funded team. And James Vowles has talked about it recently, how Williams has kind of rested on their laurels. And they haven't really changed their infrastructure since then because Williams was just completely reliant on BMW's money. Toyota, I think it was $2 to $4 billion they put into the sport as well. They got shafted, like Sean and I have talked about before, with being unable to use their hybrid engines. But there was still a lot of money being put into that team to try and compete. Money doesn't always mean success. And we're going to talk about this more. I have a lot of solutions, but I want to just keep going here. The idea that it was endless money and endless practice from Michael isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, other teams had equal amounts, not equal, but similar amounts of money. But they didn't have Michael's work ethic. They didn't have his knowledge. They didn't have his expertise. This idea that you had to tear that down, you had to restrict the budget and you had to restrict testing times, is so anti-competition that you'd only see it in a place like Europe where it's socially acceptable to tear people down and then claim that you're a winner. It's the entire history of Europe. It's invading other countries and stealing what they have, not building your own. And there was one example of Bismarck's Germany right before 1914. They actually developed their way up. And of course, if you read a lot of British papers at the time, there was a talk like, well, we have to tear them down. This German threat is coming. And Germany wanted nothing to do with destroying Britain. They actually wanted to work with Britain. They were Anglophiles. A lot of Germans love Britain for some fucking reason. British hate German. That's why I don't know. But yeah, that is a very European mindset. Tear each other down and act like you're the winner once you've torn the dominant person down. You don't see that shit in North America. You see that shit in Canada. You don't see that shit in America. Because a great example is Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Hard workers. Michael Jordan cut from his high school basketball team in his freshman season. Worked hard, got back on the team, dominated, worked his way into the NBA, wasn't winning, had to deal with the Pistons, and what did he do? He didn't sit here, complain, and wait for the rules to change, try and tear down the Pistons. He bulked up. He built his team. He changed his style. And yes, he got helped by the fact that the refs started calling the Pistons, literally punching him in the face at times. That was a rule change that I think it's rightly done. Basketball isn't a contact sport. And if there's a Jordan rule that literally is like killing him, trying to kill him, that should be stopped. But Michael had to work hard to win. Nobody sat there and said, oh, look, Michael's in the gym practicing every day. Michael's bulking up every day. This isn't fair. He's won 6 titles of 8 years in the 90s, 3 in a row and 3 in a row. Let's stop him because it's not competitive. Let's make it so that Michael can't work out in the gym every day. Let's make it so that he's only allowed certain practice times. Yeah, this is completely acceptable in Formula One, by the way, which is what we have now. You're not allowed to test every day. You're only allowed certain testing periods. You're allowed to work the simulator as much as you want, and Max Verstappen does. And everybody hates it because he's willing to do that work, even though it doesn't translate as well as, say, actual testing did. But he's got great work ethic. Jordan had great work ethic. Kobe talks about how he was up every day at 4, sometimes 3, just to get 2 or 3 extra workouts in a day compared to the people around him. Kobe didn't have that much talent. He was short. He wasn't that naturally great of a basketball player. He fucking worked. Mamba mentality. He was zoned in, locked in. If he lost, he was in the gym the next day. If he was out in the playoffs, if he didn't win the championship, he was in the gym the next day until the next year, focusing, I want to win. I'm going to do what it takes to win. When Shaq left, he worked even harder. He said, I'm getting older. I need to work harder to win. I don't want to start losing. I want to get 5 titles. I want one more than Shaq. That's the fucking mentality you want. You don't want to restrict that in the name of competition, quote unquote competition, and being fair. It's anti-competition. What Kobe and Michael did was competition. Destroying Michael Schumacher because he's testing every day in the private track is fucking ludicrous. It's fucking nonsense. Where were the other teams doing that? A lot of them had their own private tracks. A lot of them could have rented private tracks. They could have spent money to work at certain tracks. They could have tested their cars. What, these places are going to say no to a Formula One team? Well, we don't have the money, some of them. Yeah, some of the smaller teams. Before I get into solutions on that, I just want to say, is it boring that a guy turned a team that couldn't start in 96? Don't forget that. In 96, they couldn't start the car some races. To an untouchable team in 02? Is that boring that he was testing every day? That he was competing with McLaren, Williams, McLaren, Mercedes, Williams, 4 years in a row before he won? Would have been one less. 5 years of Ferrari until he won. Should have been 4, 99. Ferrari, I guess, didn't do enough testing when the brake failure happened. And once again, I want to point out, Rory Byrne said at TV on Monaco 2002, he said, this is the perfect car we've ever made, but we wouldn't have done it without Michael. It wouldn't have been that good when they were already dominating the season at that point, and Michael's dominating qualifying at Monaco 02. And he says, without Michael's feedback, we don't get perfect. We tried to figure out a perfect aero balance and perfect speed, and for the first time ever, we got it. But without Michael's information, we couldn't have. Why is that a bad thing, that Michael's testing every day to find that car? This league was supposed to be about progress, in engineering too. A lot of the stuff we see in modern day cars came from Formula One originally. They're the advancement in engineering that we've now restricted in the name of making things more fair and interesting. And by the way, we've gotten the exact opposite. We've gotten the exact opposite. We've just gotten other teams dominating. I've said this a million times on this show. Oh, Ferrari's dominating too much. It's too boring. They have too much money and they test too much. Let's restrict it to make things more interesting, just to get 4 years of Red Bull, 8 years of Mercedes, and now 4 years of Red Bull. 16 years of uselessness. Was it worth it, guys? And then let's not even talk about Braun in 2009, which came out dominating everybody. Just because everybody copied them mid-season doesn't mean it was still domination by Braun those first 7 boring races. It was awful. They hate Michael because they don't understand what he did. They hate Michael because they're not willing to do the work. That's why they had to destroy them, destroy Ferrari and Michael. More so Michael. Ferrari, I think, is part of it. Ferrari was happy to let them take Michael down a peg because Michael had become bigger than Ferrari. I've said it before. If Ferrari really cared about Michael, if Ferrari really thought what they were doing was unfair, they would have left F1, which they threatened to do when the rules originally came out in 2005, which was blatant rules against them. There's an excellent video by Aidan Millward. He does some excellent analysis on the 2005 rule changes. You can talk about it. It was legitimately said Bridgestone can't develop their tires, which Ferrari, Jordan, and Minardi had Bridgestone tires. And everybody else can. We want more longer stints for safety. And they got the opposite of that. They got less safe tires. And remember, everybody had to pull out of the 2005 Indianapolis Grand Prix because the Michelins weren't safe. It was done under the guise of safety. I've said this a million times before on this podcast. Whenever Formula One strives for a goal, they usually get the exact opposite. We want more closer racing, more competition. That's why we're doing the ground effect downforce cars in 2022. And sure enough, a year later, Max Verstappen wins 21 of 22 races. Or Red Bull. Max Verstappen wins 19 of them. Good job. Just because you finally got it now this year, sort of. Max has still won 5 of 8. The percentage has gone down a bit. Doesn't mean you succeeded. Anyways, they're not willing to do what Michael was willing to do. Someone like Lewis Hamilton is not willing to do what Michael was willing to do. He even said it, like Michael's dominance was so boring, he just couldn't watch it. You know, like, very interesting to me that someone who was more than okay with all these rule changes going up these past 10 years because he knew they would help him win, suddenly in 2022 turned around and said, well, we need more clear-cut rules on what we can do for testing. We should try and exploit any advantage we have. And it's like, yeah, but you eliminated all the safeguards. You locked yourself into this prison and threw away the key. And then now that you're locked up and somebody else is free, like Max, at a better structured team for the moment, your solution is, okay, now make it easy for me to compete, which is so fucking hypocritical. It's not, there's no proof that you could fix anything anyways, Lewis. But you were more than okay to shed on Michael Schumacher all those years because you didn't understand what he was doing. You were more than okay to make it so that nobody could test. Nobody could develop their car like Ferrari did. Because your team already had all the infrastructure in place. Your team had the top-of-the-line wind tunnels. Your team had the top-of-the-line simulators. Your team had the infrastructure in place. So then you close the door on the bottom teams, which is why I think a lot of this stuff doesn't benefit the bottom teams, like the cost cap, like the inability to test. Cost cap especially. Like I said about Williams, Williams is 20 years behind, and Valves has hinted, like, I'm kind of locked in by the cost cap. I can't spend more money on the car, otherwise I go over the cost cap. And if I can't spend more money on the car, we're going to be stuck at the back because I got to keep a budget in case of crashes and, you know, anything like catering, like they made fun of Red Bull. But on top of that, since my infrastructure, Williams is 20 years behind, I can't upgrade that because it's part of the cost cap. A lot of teams these days are getting around it, like Audi, like Andretti, even though Andretti's getting fucked, by almost cheating in the sense that they're saying, okay, we're going to join Formula One in this year. And they get their infrastructure in place by not being in Formula One, spending as much money as they want, which is fucking ridiculous. It's almost like cheating. Think about it. As long as I'm not in Formula One, I can spend as much money as I want to update my infrastructure to then come into the league so that I'm competitive. Why not just let teams update their infrastructure at will? Why have a cost cap? Why not let Williams take a chance, borrow money, update its infrastructure? By the way, they might also get it wrong. Spending money, like I said, doesn't guarantee results. Teams have to take a chance. And you have to let them take a chance. They might fail. Minardi failed 6 times over. Forti failed 6 times over. Tyrrell, Babram, Jordan. Jordan wasn't their fault. It was because of that rule change in 2005, like I mentioned. Which, by the way, for the record, if you were supposed to make it easier for the smaller teams, how come Jordan and Minardi went bankrupt in 2 years? I'm talking about the 2005 rule changes. So yeah, it's a rhetorical question. I had more thoughts too. Like it's obvious, like I said, about like this wasn't about making it fair. It was about the bigger teams solidifying their place. If they already have their infrastructure in place, like I'm talking about, like Audi or Andretti, Mercedes, Red Bull. Red Bull came in with a lot of money and then closed the door on everybody else. Red Bull spent billions of dollars just to come in and compete. And they came at a time when they, like I said, they restricted Ferrari, restricted McLaren, and then they said, okay, now we'll come into the league and build from there. It's easier for us to compete. They couldn't compete before, which is fucking ridiculous. It's like I said, tearing everybody down so that you can win and then say, look how great of a winner I am. No, under old rules, under old circumstances, you couldn't do anything. And that's your fault. Money and power does not equal success. Not always. It's a good advantage, but if you have a bad structure in place, you can still lose. Look at the Premier League. Manchester United was dominating the Premier League for years. Alex Ferguson leaves. A lot of the personnel leaves, the scouting staff leaves, a lot of the generation of great players who dominated leave, and they haven't fucking won since. But they have all the money in the world, all the investment in the world. They keep buying the greatest players, buying the greatest coaches. It doesn't work because the structure's bad. Money does not equal success. By destroying Ferrari, you destroyed the league in 2005. You made it less competitive. Did you notice? Max Verstappen dominating 21, or Red Bull dominating 21 of 22 races. Same with Mercedes. I think they won 16 of 18 2 years in a row in 2014, 2015, 2016 as well. I think it was 17 of 19. Is that exciting? Is that competitive? No. And it stems from those changes. You made the league worse in the name of making it better, like you always do. And it comes from the mentality that it's okay to tear people down because they're relentless, because they're really good. Nobody was as smart as Michael. Nobody was as hardworking as Michael. Tearing him down did not make you better, made you worse, if you'll notice, because you haven't had real competition since. When things go bad, you guys fuck up for 8 years. Red Bull. When things started going bad, you couldn't win when Mercedes' era. Mercedes, you're going through that right now. You can't win. You may not win for a long time. You need someone like Michael now to help you back up. That's why you're going after Verstappen so badly. You know it and I know it. So yeah, cost cap doesn't help the small teams. It helps the big teams who have everything in place. They have their infrastructure in place. So now other teams can't spend that money to copy their infrastructure, to grow, to take chances on their product, on their design. They have to sit here and work within a box and squeeze out as little as they can, as much as they can, with as little as possible, in the hopes that they catch the big teams. And sure enough, the big teams already have everything in place. They can just kind of coast and hope the regulation changes don't fuck them up too much in the case of Red Bull and Mercedes or Ferrari. Oh, it's a curveball, these new regulations. Yeah, like, who cares? If it's the same 3 teams who have been winning, do we really have competition here? Do we really have? No. Who are the 3 biggest engine manufacturers? Ferrari, Mercedes. Red Bull's not an engine manufacturer, but they have 2 teams. 4 teams for Mercedes, 3 for Ferrari, 2 for Red Bull. 9 of the 10 teams. You notice they don't want to bring in an 11th team, right? Dilutes their power a little bit. They're okay with Alpine sitting there as like an old relic that's clearly not going to win. Very unpowerful engines. They all sat there and grabbed their engines when they could, like McLaren, Renault, Red Bull, Renault, when they were good. Second they were bad, they were happy to just let them list lazily to the left and fly out into the sunset. Wasn't about making things more fair so that Alpine can compete with the top, was it? No. Alpine has no power. 9 of the 10 teams amongst 3 teams. 3 works teams, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull. Of course they don't want things to change. Anyways, before I get too off topic, the reason they were able to take down Michael, and this is going to go into the second part of my discussion, the reason it was okay to take down Michael in their eyes is because Michael was never part of that club. He wasn't groomed. He wasn't from an elite family. He was from a hardworking German family, you've seen in the Schumacher documentary. He wasn't part of Formula One management. He was friends with Ross Brawn, yeah, but like as we found out in the future, Ross Brawn didn't have as much pull as other people, especially when the others band together. And the mainstream F1 media hated him from day one. Hated him from day one. They thought Prost, Mansell, even Senna, even fucking an idiot like Damon Hill, which I've talked about a million times, they were supposed to be the winners. So when Michael took over, they were more than happy to spread Ayrton Senna's rumor, which was, to me, his biggest mistake. When he said Michael was cheating in 94. Michael must be cheating. No, he was just beating you in that point in time, Ayrton. But they were more than happy to try and tear Michael down in 94, like I've talked about in other podcasts. I have a couple unreleased ones that I might release in the future, really going into depth about that. They were more than happy to try and play defense for Damon Hill, their groomed British boy, proper driver, who sat here the last 30 years since Australia 94, implying, without directly saying, that Michael probably cheated to win that title. You're scared to say it because you know it's not true, and you know you'll be exposed for the fraud that you are if you say it. So you hide behind everybody else and you go, well, I don't know what I would have done in that silly British accent where he like pulls his teeth from the bottom. Fucking can't stand him talking. And you sit there and you say, well, what would I have done? I don't know. Would I have crashed into him? What a horrible fucking thing to say. So you would have cheated? You're projecting onto Michael the fact that you would have cheated? Michael explicitly has said, no, I didn't cheat. It was a racing incident. If you look at it, it was a racing incident. So you're implying that you would have cheated? Why the fuck would the media push you and not tear you down for admitting that I would have been a cheater in that situation? Ayrton Senna, by the way. Michael's a cheater. What happened in Japan 1990, Ayrton? When you deliberately crashed into Prost, admitted it after, and said, well, it's because of what happened in 89, which was also partially your fault too. You were willing to win a title like that and then openly admit it, and nobody thought to call you a cheater? I don't think you're a bad person. I adore a lot of the things you've done over the years. All the especially that interview with Jackie Stewart. I mean, Jackie tries to twist the English language on Ayrton, his second language, and tries to guilt him into saying, you should go slower because it's unsafe. You're going to raise a generation of people who are going to drive unsafe, and just because you think you have God on your side, you don't. And Ayrton says, I leave everything in God's hands, and if you don't go for a gap that doesn't exist, you're not a racing driver. And turns around to him and says, you're a racing driver too, Jackie. You should know how dangerous this sport is. I'm not trying to be unsafe, but don't guilt me into thinking I should be less than I am. What a fucking genius. What a fucking genius you were, Ayrton. But then you turn around and you say Michael must have been cheating when there's 2 deliberate incidents 2 years in a row of you trying to cheat. Yeah, you got shafted out of the 89 title. We agree. F1 philosophy sees you as the proper 4-time champion, not Prost. But what you did in 90 was way more deliberate than what Michael did. If Michael's even is deliberate. But yeah, I got way off topic. They're willing to push someone like Damon Hill because he's part of the club. Michael's not part of the club. Michael wasn't groomed. Michael was his own man. He was independent. He's willing to do the work. They hate that. They believe they should pick and choose who the winners are. You're seeing this right now. The perfect example of this is Oliver Bearman, to relate it back to modern day times. You can control someone who's not very good. His results in F2 don't warrant a spot in F1. His results in F1 don't warrant a spot in F1. Last in testing almost every time, or towards the back in the Haas. Oh, he's only 2/10 off Hulkenberg. Yeah. 7th in the very fast Ferrari, Carlos Sainz's Ferrari, that was 3rd and 1st in the first three, in two of the two races of the first three. Third and first, you came seventh barely. The McLaren and the Mercedes were faster than you. Mercedes, by the way, is claiming this is their worst car ever. McLaren was still growing at that point in time. If they didn't make strategy fuck-ups with Norris and Hamilton, you would have finished ninth in the very fast Ferrari that Charles Leclerc got a podium in that same race. Yes, like Sean's talked about, kudos to you keeping it on the track. But why so much hype around him? Even Sean's getting fed up with this. Antonelli and Bearman. Antonelli just needs more time, we think. We think he'll be a great F1 driver. He just needs more time to develop. Just not right now in F1. Not literally right now. Maybe even next year. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see. I think maybe it makes more sense to bring him in 26. We'll see. Why the hype around Bearman, though? It's because you can control someone who's bad when you give him an undeserved position. They won't say anything controversial. They'll talk the line you want them to talk. They'll be part of the club. Any rule changes that the Formula One management and the FIA want to bring in, Oliver Bearman will be like, yeah, that's a good idea. He won't sit there and say it's stupid because he doesn't have an independent mind. It's because he's unexceptional. Yeah, I'm going to say that. I don't care how wrong I may sound in the future. I honestly think I'm going to be prophetic with this. I've talked about this, Sean and I have talked about this before. Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead, outlines this so spectacularly. I encourage everybody to read that book. It exemplifies and lays out exactly what happens in media at all times. She wrote that in 1936. I think it was released in 43. She started writing the book in 36. And in that book, she talks about how the media exercises its control by controlling mediocre people they liken to undeserved positions, like I said. Another example was that lady, Michelle from, I forget her last name, from the BBC or Sky Sports. She says, Alex Albon deserves a spot. Remember I talked about that before? He deserves a spot. For what, a few points at Williams every now and then? Alex Albon deserves a spot at Mercedes. Yeah, how did that work with George Russell? Not well. Why are they pushing people like that? George Russell, same thing, well-groomed, tall, handsome British boy. Why do you need him so badly? Because you know he's not going to rock the boat in any way. Doesn't matter how arrogant he is, how many bad crashes he has, how underachieving he is, like Sean's talked about a million times. He's just going to sit here in 5th and 6th all year, not grow into anything, and nobody's going to think to get rid of him. Formula One philosophy thinks he should go. You're hearing it here. We're willing to say that. But there's an excellent example in The Fountainhead, and one of the characters is Gail Wyman, someone who's more focused on his narcissism and his brand and having influence through money and power than really being the man he could be. Gail Wyman is a media mogul with a lot of money. The Wyman Tower, like Trump, it's actually very fucking prophetic that she, like I said, wrote that in 1936. But Gail Wyman is monitoring his paper. He has a newspaper in this book. And in the newspaper, there's a writer who's the antagonist of the story named Ellsworth Toohey. He's a function of the media. He knows how to control the media. So he knows how to use his writing in a way to influence the minds of people, to deceive them into thinking the way he thinks. And Ayn Rand wasn't religious, but in many ways she implies in that book that Ellsworth Toohey is the devil, and Howard Rourke, the protagonist, the man who succeeds in the end, who I liken to Max Verstappen, someone who's just willing to do the work, doesn't care what anybody thinks. Michael Schumacher, same thing. Willing to do the work, doesn't care what anybody thinks, just keep doing what he's doing, no matter how many things they throw at him, how many times they try and hobble him, he just keeps going back to work because he loves what he does. Toohey is not Howard Rourke. He has no natural ability. He has no strength. He's not even that great of a mind. He just knows how to deceive people. So he's writing about a book that's really bad. It's called The Gallant Gallstone in the Fountainhead. The book's called The Gallant Gallstone by this terrible writer named Lois Cook. And in it, Ellsworth Toohey keeps talking about how great it is in one review, and then they keep sneaking it in other articles in order to keep promoting it, to keep it in the psyche of the people who are readers of this newspaper, to keep it in the ether of people's minds. Sound familiar? We always hear about how great Oliver Bearman is. Liam Lawson, Antonelli, these are the future of F1. Doesn't matter what the results in F2 and other series show. Doesn't matter how average Lawson was in his 5 races at RB. They're the future. Let's just keep talking about it. Let's just keep mentioning them. Let's keep sneaking them in because we like them. They're controllable. Lawson and Bearman are Commonwealth nations, New Zealand, England. It's what the BBC wants. They want people like that in the sport. As far as Sky Sports, BBC is concerned, Formula One should be 20 British drivers. So they use their influence in any way they can to get these drivers who are undeserved by sneaking their names in at all times. And like that, in the Fountainhead, Winan turns around and says, "What's the Gallant Gallstone?" Says that to Toohey. "Why are you sneaking in all of your writings?" And he goes over a list of examples over several different days because Winan went through the paper and combed through the paper and said, "What the hell is this?" And Toohey tries to brush it off and just says, "Oh, it's just a cute little book." And Winan sees through him and says, "I don't care what you do in your writing, but don't promote selfishly in my paper without coming through me." And he says, "Stop writing about the Gallant Gallstone." Winan saw through it. Winan stops it. I'd like to think I'm acting like Gail Winan right now by saying Oliver Bearman has no fucking business being in Formula One. Based on his results in F2, based on his results in F1, based on the fact that he's going to be going to a tougher team, a tougher car to drive like Haas. He's going to be at the back, and he's not very good. Why are we pushing him in here? Why do we need Antonelli in right now? Why is Liam Lawson this great young prospect? Based on what? Is he that good or is he marketable in your eyes? Do you want him there? Is he relentless? Does he work hard in the same way? Doesn't seem like it. There's no proof. Is he like a Michael Schumacher? If you want competition to Max Verstappen, why aren't you getting a million Max Verstappens? Hardworking, well-resulted individuals. Max had issues with discipline, crashing in F3, but he always had great results. And he was given a chance, and he continued those results. When Bearman and Lawson were given the chance, they didn't exactly warrant another chance. They didn't have amazing results. Yeah, 1/10 by Lawson in Singapore. Okay, good. It's overachieving a little bit. Arguing about how I should have got the seat over Yuki Tsunoda because I got 13th and Yuki got 14th in Japan. Who gives a fuck? That's last as far as you're concerned. Anywhere outside the points is invaluable. But why are they pushing these drivers and not, say, ones that can genuinely compete with Max Verstappen? Don't you want 20 relentless, hardworking drivers like Max? No. No, they want drivers like Lewis Hamilton who'll go to the Met Gala and promote himself and do all the cool elitist things, say all the right things politically. They want the Charles Leclerc who's a great model but a terrible driver. They want the Carlos Sainz who's quirky and funny but not necessarily going to win a championship. Smooth operator. Oh, look, he comes 5th to 7th all the time. Yeah, great. Took him how many years in a Ferrari to finally win a race? Instead of looking for controllable people, why not look for great drivers? The rule changes created the groundwork for Max dominance that was worse than Michael. But now they're trying to track back and say, instead of trying to find a million Maxes or a million Michaels or opening up the rules again to make it so that everybody can compete. And I know I'm saying this at a time when there's about to be a great title fight. Potentially this year. Potentially. by the looks of it. Might just be a 3 below average races for Red Bull. By the way, still a second and a first in 2 of those 3 races. Monaco is not a great example of what's going to happen the rest of the season. Red Bull's probably still going to dominate, but let's say they don't. I can still talk about this because the history up until this point was because of shit like this, because of attitudes like this, like what I showed you in the clip. It's okay to stop Michael because it's unfair. Instead of finding 20 Michaels, it was tear down 1. It's a lot easier. You get a lot more control and influence that way, like Ellsworth Toohey. Ellsworth Toohey in The Fountainhead doesn't try to stop Howard Rourke. He tries to stop other people from being Howard Rourke. He knows he can't fight Howard Rourke head on. So he lays the groundwork so that the influence brings up other people who are mediocre. He promotes those mediocre people. He says, look how much better these people are, even though the results don't show it. And then he takes down Rourke with a lawsuit in the book, which is fucking... It's such an apt comparison to what I'm talking about right now. He doesn't beat Rourke head on with ability. And in that book, Rourke was an architect. He beats him in the courtroom, in the rules, in the regulations. Doesn't try and find a better architect. Doesn't try and influence better architects. Doesn't promote Howard Rourke, and which is what he should have done. Said, look how great Howard Rourke is. How many people can be like him and be better? Strive for greatness. No, you can't control those people. They don't need the media. They don't need to talk to the media. They don't need articles written about them. Which is why oftentimes you see like media people and like critics, they're such negative-minded people. Joe Rogan was talking about that in one of his podcasts the other day. I forget who it was with. It was probably Dave Smith or someone talking about critics. And he said all the critics look like exactly who you think they look like ugly, poor diet, messed up people. Because they're so negative in their mind, they would rather tear down people who they know are great to control the people who are worse. That's exactly what happened in Formula One. Anyways, had more thoughts, but I think I'm just going to leave it there. Did you pick up what I was putting down today? We need 20 Michaels. We need the rules to go back to 2000 to 2004. That's how you make it more competitive. That's how you make more title fights. Controlling a bad product is not as good as letting the reins off the horse, so to speak. Breaking the horse doesn't make it faster. Makes it weaker. Letting the horse run wild, that's where you'll see the speed. Don't try to control the horse. Ride it to greatness. Let people like Michael come back into the sport. Bring back the old rules. And like Sean's talked about before, yeah, maybe there's a way to do it so that there's more efficient engines. I'm not saying do this right now. I'm saying you got to slowly work your way back. Maybe just bring in a second tire manufacturer to start. Just start there. Make it more interesting. Make it more interesting that way. Anyways, more Michaels, less Oliver Bearmans. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Less control by the media, more control by the drivers. Being great and exceptional. More exceptional drivers, less Zhou Guanyus, less Oliver Bearmans, less Logan Sargents, less George Russells, less Lewis Hamiltons? No. Lewis Hamilton belongs in the sport, but he should recognize what he is. He's not willing to do the work. I like having Hamilton in the sport. He's an example of someone who's just a level down on the Michaels and the Maxes and the Ayrtons. But he thinks he's the best. Maybe he is. Maybe I'm wrong. F1_philosophy at Instagram. F1 Philosophy at YouTube. Please keep watching our shorts, liking our videos. I'm going to give you a short every day. Videos every day. I promise. And F1philosophypod at gmail.com. I don't know if Gatsby was responsible for 9/11. but the evidence is damning. Maybe not fully responsible, he's partially responsible. God, Gatsby, you monster. All right, everybody, look forward to seeing what you think about this. Have a good one.